going to be making a pumpkin with 2 pounds and 4 ounces of my local clays that I dig. Just centering as normal. I'll bring this out pretty wide. And because I don't attach the stem later, but make it out of the pot here when I close it in the top, make the bottom pretty thin because I won't be able to trim these. For this, I'm going to throw pretty much a cylinder, trying to keep it closed in towards the middle so that when I do go to close the form and create the stem, it's not quite so difficult. I also have to keep this thick enough to be able to bow it out and create that rounded pumpkin shape. So I'll release pressure here to get near the top. Otherwise it'll start to fold over when I do close in. Here I'm just pushing in the bottom a little bit so that I get a nice undercut. Because I want it to look like it's kind of round going towards the bottom. So go ahead and close in the top a little bit, and I'll start to shape the outside, just leaving this open enough for me to get my hand down in there. Hold my rib bent, my thumb putting pressure in the middle, trying to guide the clay out into that bend to get the rounded shape. I have to be careful with how far I take it, in particular with these wild clays, because they don't have the plasticity of a commercial clay. Alright, so now I'll try to close in the top some more and bring in the very lip of it some. Just using contact on each side. Try for about 4 different points of contact. While it's not a huge issue, if it's not level at the top and it starts to wobble a little bit, I want to keep it kind of close to even and flat until I get it all the way closed and create the stem. And so I've sort of run out of clay there, so I'll pull some up and in from this edge that's created here. And each time I do that, I need to round it back out or it'll sink. My inside finger is just slightly above where my thumb is on the outside, and I'm pushing in with my thumb. Outside finger is just trying to give some counter pressure to keep it stable, and also to help me pull it up just a little bit. So here it's basically the same shape as my round vases. I would add the lip there. Instead, I'll keep going, closing that in. And remove the slip. To again try to keep it from wobbling or sinking in. Don't want this to be too wet. Just pinching it and pulling it up a little bit. Continuing to do that until I get it closed and I start to get some height. And find where the body of the pumpkin ends and the stem begins. Does not have too much of a curve there. Take some of the slip off the stem. And my hand's not too wet. I'm going to pull this stem using this part of my finger to make it a little bit more square. and then later I'll come back and carve off or scrape off the slip that's created doing that to reveal some of this marbling on the stem. So I'll do it in a few different directions. If my fingers are too wet, this is going to flop. I would wait and do it later, but it's about 5:45 in the morning, and I'm about to head off to my real job as an English professor. I won't be able to get back to this before it's too dry. Suppose I could potentially cover it and get back to it with it a little bit more dry and do more with the stem. But all right, before I fold that over, I want to get this undercut clean to give the illusion of a round bottom. Again, because I can't really efficiently trim this while making a giant chuck to set it down in and keep the stem in shape. Alright, so here I'm going to put a small hole near the stem so that I don't bust out the curve here when I go to put the lines in, just from the air pressure that's inside there as I push on it. This also helps with drying some, and after these are about leather hard, I will cut a hole in the bottom as well just to help with that drying process and not have to worry about an explosion in the kiln. And if I'm not happy with these lines, I can come back and carve them a little bit more deeply and cleanly and get all the way to the bottom. But usually this is good. Just using the tip of my finger, steadying it with the other hand. I'll split it into quarters first, more or less. Now with that air hole poked here in the top, I should be able to recess this a little bit, push it out. It's going to reform the curve that I may have messed up some when using my finger there. I've got one more spot to do. And then I'll shape this a little bit. Again, I'll come back through after this is hardened up some, and I'll scrape off the slip and reveal some of the marbling on the stem. And that is how I make a pumpkin from my local hand-dug clays. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the comments and I'll answer them to the best of my ability.